As you can see, the camera quality is better because I got a new camera and I'm very excited about it. It's just completely like opened up my creativity. And so today I just wanted to do a get ready with me. It sometimes does feel hard to keep up with content creation, given that like I am doing a dissertation right now. So, you know, we do our best. We post when we can, we film when we can, and I'm just experimenting with different ways of like incorporating content creation into my life and into my routine. So that's why I'm doing a get ready with me. I also just wanted to chat about something that happened to me recently. So basically I got asked if I want to be a nanny. And I want to start out by clarifying that there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing nanny work. In fact, I think being a nanny is, should be moved out of the kind of like informal agreement that it's often based on, and should be moved into like the same formalization that more quote unquote traditional careers get, right? Like the employee numbers, tax, 401k, all of that good stuff, because I think when that kind of work is left to the informal sector, that's how people are vulnerable to getting taken advantage of. I also think once it gets formalized, I think it opens up the opportunity for like government-based subsidizing. In the same way people can apply, well, used to be able to apply for science grants from the government to kind of do certain research. I do think it's an industry that should be supported and subsidized by the government and by tax money. But now I speak of issues of which I do not know and of which are current hot topics. So we're just not going to go there. But I think what had happened to me, I kind of went through a roller coaster, because I'm sure all of you have seen that clip in Little Fires Everywhere where I think Elena asks, I forget the main character, Elena asks a woman she's just met if she wants to be like her maid.
Something. I'm fine. You know, I've been meaning to hire someone for my house. Just to do a little light cleaning, some laundry, maybe cook dinner.
You mean, like to be your maid?
More like a housekeeper.
Yeah, I don't do that.
Oh, I wasn't assuming. You said the thing about the museum and the 3 a.m.
Yeah, because I wanted to cultivate a relationship with the curator. I got something that I needed out of it.
I know you would get something out of this as well. I mean, we would pay. We pay fair. We pay really well. I mean, we pay what's fair, and whatever you thought was fair, that's what we would pay. But I just, you know what I meant was house helper, house manager. That's what I really meant, because I'm so unorganized. But it was just a suggestion, so take it or leave it.
And I'm not saying, now I want to make a distinction that, right, like she was being asked to like clean the house, which is different from being asked to take care of children, right? Like I think taking care of children is maybe like, could be positioned as better than cleaning the house. But I think for me, part of the roller coaster of feelings was first that as a woman of color, who is also like here on a visa, you would be surprised at how often I get requests to do like domestic related labor. Or its corollary, its more casual corollary, if I'm out shopping at a mall, if I'm not dressed up like in tights and I'm kind of, you know, my hair is put together and my nails are done or that kind of thing, I'm assumed to work at the store, and it's like a quick assumption. They don't even like look to see if I'm wearing a tag or an apron or something like that. Like it's just a very quick and immediate assumption that happens. I am inclined to think that that assumption, some part comes from the fact that like I am a Black woman, and historically in this country, Black people have always been allowed in white spaces under the condition that you're there to provide some kind of service. So I think when it happens to me, then that's kind of the when it happens to me, basically, I begin to wonder if like, okay, is there something about my look that makes people think I'm a service provider rather than like, you know, a customer? So when I got this request, like, that was the background, that I have been asked to do service work before. I have been assumed to be the help if I'm not adequately dressed in a certain way. And then in all these questionings, I always want to be careful not to unintentionally devalue that work, right? In the process of being like, oh my God, do I give off nanny vibes? I don't want to unintentionally make it seem like being a nanny is somehow bad. Or in the process of being like, no, I don't work here, I don't want to unintentionally be like, imply that working at a place is bad. It's not. And so this is the other catch-22 that these kinds of requests put you in, that you're at risk of sounding like you are looking down on certain kinds of labor, even when you're not. And then it also made me think of like a scene in a book. Oh my God. I just got the elf snap shadow thing in I Love You, a Latte. And I can't. What the fuck? Oh. Okay. Where was I? Yeah, I don't want to seem like I'm like devaluing that kind of work, or any kinds of work, because I think whatever labor people either choose to engage in or find themselves in. Anyway. So yeah, on the one hand, I never want to look like I'm like demeaning someone else's like chosen or work, like I don't want to seem like I'm demeaning any forms of labor, especially forms of labor that women are more likely to engage in, like retail work and nannying work. And at the same time, and I don't know if this is like a growing up South African thing, because I am from South Africa, for those of you who don't know. But something tells me it's a people of color thing, and I think this because, give me 1 second. Anyway, growing up in South Africa, right, and just to give you some context, South Africa suffers under apartheid from the years 1948 all the way through to 1994. And 1994 is the year that sees the first democratic election of Nelson Mandela. It's a very big deal, very historic moment, but for South Africa and the world, because for the world it was symbolic of the ability to move on from a racial regime in a peaceful way. Which means being born After 94, so I was born in 1992, it means I'm part of what you call the born free generation, which means the generation of South Africans who were born outside of political constraints based on race. But what that also means is that I had parents who grew up under this regime. Anyone before 94, in fact, my older brother was born in 92, so we call him a quarter to born free because he's not quite there yet. He was still technically born under the apartheid regime. But the long and short of what that means is that black people, the kinds of jobs that black people had access to were teaching, nursing, and domestic work. And domestic work made up the majority of what women were allowed to do under apartheid. Oh, my eyes are looking a little dark. It's okay. We're playing, we're experimenting, it's all good. The kinds of labor that the majority of black women had access to was domestic labor. And so I think a lot of other black people in this country too, and I suspect actually people of color more generally and immigrant people, always grow up with this sense that like, now that we have the opportunity to do something better, you are not going to be a teacher, you are going to be a doctor. You are not going to be a paralegal, you are going to be a lawyer. You are not going to be a nurse, you are going to be a doctor. Right? Like this is the imperative that is drived into you from day one. And I think some part of it is because, and you know, I've had these conversations with my own mother, it's because like my grandmother's only option was to do domestic work, was to, for most black people, their only option was to do domestic work. That's all they could, that was the only option given. And so then my parents, right, again, that's kind of, it didn't just inform like how the kinds of careers they wanted us to pursue. It also informs like the way you present yourself to the world, right? Don't dress like you're just anything. Dress well, present yourself well, represent yourself well, because you have the chance to in a way that the people came before you never did. And the reason I do think this is something, it is something that black people in America, and I think immigrants in America, and just in general people of color in America struggle with, because I'm currently reading Long Division by Kiese Lemond. And if you don't know the story, long and short, this young boy is doing like a spelling bee type competition. And so as not to ruin the plot, he doesn't do well, and all of the people around him are like, do you know who came before you? This is not about you. This is about carrying on the legacy of the race. And that's what made me realize, like, yep, okay, this is definitely something that black people in America struggle with, and that this is not, whilst there are certain things that are different for me coming from South Africa, there is something universal about growing up with the pressure to represent your race, your people. So this is all a very long way to say that when you grow up with all of that and someone asks if you want to be a nanny, this is the way in which I'm going to hear it. I'm going to hear it. The way I hear it is, damn, I'm in a PhD program at Duke. what is it about my being that says domestic worker? And there's nothing about my being that says domestic worker, nothing. And now, so here's the other side of it, where like I think my being South African and not American kind of plays a role, where I spoke to the person and I asked them, because one thing I have learned is if I suspect that anything has to do with the isms, ask. Don't assume, ask. Asking is uncomfortable, but you'd rather have a discomfort in the asking than a discomfort that comes with assumption. And thankfully, they were very gracious and cleared up the fact that, you know, for certain Americans, and I think it's like I don't know if it's like a Northeastern way of thinking or a Southern way of thinking. I don't know, but they basically said when it comes to looking for a babysitter, friendship is the criteria upon which you ask someone to be a nanny. Because you're friends with them, you trust them, and you trust them in your home, and you trust them with their child. And it was on that basis that they asked me. It had nothing to do with the fact that I'm a woman or the fact that I'm black or the intersection of those two things. And that was super, super helpful, because I think that's now American cultural information that it cannot be assumed that I know it, because if that moment showed anything, it's that like, I need you to explicitly tell me. And I've also learned to ask, right? And I've also learned to ask and like always be aware of those kinds of things. So I don't know. Yeah, I think that moment, it's never easy to try and talk about these things. Never, 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 never easy. And at the same time, if you don't talk, who does it sit with? So anyway, that was just like the most recent drama that's happened in my life. And it just made me think of like my grandmother and all the women who came before me. This is the other book it reminded me of. It reminded me of Sol Plaatje's Mhudi. So Mhudi was written, eyebrows. I have a renegade hair. There we go. So Mhudi was written in the 1920s. What comes next after eyebrows, guys? I've done my eyes, I've done my eyebrows. Yeah, I guess I'll do blush. Blush is next. So Mhudi gets written in the 1920s, but it takes about 10 years for it to be published. It was written by Sol Plaatje, who is concealer, yes. And it was written by Sol Plaatje, a huge South African writer. He was a journalist, a translator, spoke many languages, like just all the amazing shit. And Mhudi takes place in like the 1800s in pre-colonial Southern Africa. Now for my Americans, if you're interested in pre-colonial South Africa, I would suggest you watch the most recent retelling of the Shaka Zulu story. Shaka Zulu is probably the most famous pre-colonial Southern African figure. Anyway, so it takes place in pre-colonial South Africa, and the Ndebeles are trying to take over. And they come into Mbaralong, and you know, they do their war shit, they're killing, they're plundering, they're pillaging, normal human behavior. And the only people who survive of the Baralong people is Mhudi, this woman who is smart and astute and super interesting. And she thinks she's the only person of her people who remain until she meets Urataga, who is from her same, like of her same people. And it's this beautiful Adam and Eve like setting, and they fall in love. Cool, they fall in love, they go on like all these adventures because they're trying to find like, they're basically trying to find who else has survived. It's kind of very 300-page story short. Ratacha teams up with de Villiers in order to beat the Ndebele. Now, de Villiers, for those of you who don't know, is an Afrikaans last name, and Afrikaans people are presumed to be white people. And that's its whole own research area, by the way, if Afrikaans people are white people. It's not necessarily true. Lots of different people speak Afrikaans. It's not a white language, but that's the dominant image. I love it. Wait. Guys, concealer face is a thing. It's a very real thing. Okay. Ugh. I hope my concealer sits, hey? I feel like I'm so bad at concealer. Anywho. They fall in love, they go through all these adventures. De Villiers, Afrikaans, Ratacha team up against the Ndebele. They win. And then de Villiers, so Mhudi and Ratacha are talking to de Villiers and his wife. And this is what de Villiers' wife says to Mhudi. Oh shit! I got makeup on the page. Can you see that? Oh fuck. Oh fuck my life. De Villiers vainly tried to persuade Ratacha to break with his people and remain with him. Annetjie too had fallen in love with Mhudi. She said that if she lived to have little ones of her own, surely they would be proud to have for an ayah such a noble Musadi as Mhudi. So ayah and Musadi basically mean like aunt / caretaker. The long and short, Annetjie is asking is deeply admires Mhudi, and as a result asks her to be a maid for her future children naturally. So I think when I was then having this conversation with my friends, this is the context and all the stuff that I was coming into it with. And I think oftentimes, either when you are not American or if you're not familiar with some of what people of color in this country have had to put up with and deal with, that's how it happens that a genuine misunderstanding like this takes place, where I come into it with a certain set of assumptions and they're also coming into it with a certain set of assumptions, and not malicious assumptions. I want to make that clear. I don't think their assumptions were malicious, right? Yeah, okay. We're looking clean. We're looking like, is the eye more defined? I don't know. Ugh, fuck. Do you see that? I'm already creasing. Makeup is so hard. Yeah, I clearly got it right this side though. So that's something. That's progress. Guys, makeup will keep you so fucking humble, hey? It doesn't matter how much you know. It doesn't matter how much you learn. Trying to put your face together is always going to remind you that, bitch, you could always learn something new. Okay. What do we have left to do? I think we're just gonna stay neutral today. All right. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. A face that mostly looks the same as when I... Mascara! How could I get mascara? Finishing spray. I'm just gonna do this. I like a dewy finish because Naomi Campbell likes a dewy finish. Dunzos. A face that mostly looks the same as when we started, because that's what makeup is for. Thank you so much for watching. I don't know. It'd be nice if you liked and commented and subscribed. So please do that. If you don't know what to say, just like literally type anything. Just type like, type in the word made. Oh, I really want to watch the TV show Made, actually. So maybe one thing you could type in the comments is any TV shows or books that are about this conversation. All right. Thank you so much.